Welcome to the recording. This is week 2, mobile web applications. We're just going to start with a quick recap. Yeah, I'll record all of these and then I post them in the weekly learning. Usually takes a couple days for me to upload everything and get it working, but they will be there that week. So this is week 1. So we covered Lighthouse. We did an audit of a website of our choice. So hopefully you guys have submitted lab 1, which is basically uploading a screenshot of your Lighthouse audit on any website of your choice. So it could have been Instagram, something hopefully different than Pinterest, which is what we covered. And then also we covered PWAs, but what we built originally was not actually a PWA, it was just a web application. So it was that to-do list. So I will show you what it should have looked like. Code. Go up. So you should have ended up with something hopefully that looked like this. And it was a to-do list and we could add items dynamically. I'll just open up the code here with Visual Studio Code so you guys can see what the code looked like. But it is in those videos if you didn't get a chance to get it working. Sublime text will work. Cool. So this was the index.html and then the style.css. So the list items were display flex, and they were also some of these, just very basic stuff. And then we had a function on our button that had an event listener that basically created an element, which was a div. And basically, if it was divisible by 2, we made it an odd or an even class. And then those classes, odd or even, had different colors right here for their background. So the odds were this, and the evens were this. The manifest.json, you didn't have to worry about that because we weren't making it a PWA just yet, but this was the code, and it should have looked something like this. So we were able to add items dynamically. Cool. Did anyone have questions about this or wasn't able to get it working? I know I had a couple emails about code. There was also, Michelle, you caught a semicolon in here somewhere in the button wrapper. Everybody's good with this so far, though? Cool. Awesome. Great. So yeah, that was lab 1, just getting that screenshot of that app, and then also Lighthouse audit on your website. The PowerPoint was there. What else did we cover? I think that was basically it. So let's get into the week 2 stuff. So this week, we're going to talk about Bootstrap, and we're going to talk about kind of the basics of HTML again, just to kind of give you guys a recap. So there will be an in-class submission again for today. This is going to be the lab 2 for week 2, and it's going to be another screenshot of your Nav Bar, a Bootstrap Nav Bar, working on a website that we're going to make today. It's going to be different than the to-do list website. It'll be another just static HTML page that we're going to develop, and I'll give you guys the starter code for that. So there'll be 2 screenshots that I'm wanting to see for this submission, and it'll basically be one in the mobile view. So if you hit F12 on your screen, and then basically you can choose, it'll probably by default be this responsive view, which you can change the size of here. In this little drop down up at the top, okay, if I annotate on this, we can choose a bunch of these options. So from this drop down here in responsive, you can choose any of these phones. So if you want an iPhone, iPhone 6, you can rotate the screen with this button here. So basically I want to see one screenshot of your app on a mobile screen, and then I want to see, if you close this, a screenshot of your app on the desktop screen. All right, so that's going to be the submission for this lab for the in-class today, just to cover that. And the starter code is this second link right here. So if you want to go ahead and download that into your week 2 folder, or however you organize your classwork, you can download the zip on GitHub, just here with the screen button, and then download the zip code. All right, it's going to be basic index.html with some body content, a header, and it's going to have an image. Now make sure your image is in the images folder because that's how it's referenced in the source. And then you're going to have a container class with some divs with about and paragraph information. Okay, so it's going to look a little something like, see if I have it here. Okay. Well, this is going to be the finished product, but it'll look actually, I'll just download this one. Zip. Let me know when you guys got that download. Just download the zip folder from GitHub. So just like I just did there, I just downloaded the zip folder. And now this is what I have. And I'm going to hit this extract all button. And then I'm going to extract it to where I want to put my code in week 2. So I'm going to do it in the week 2 folder because that's where I organize my classwork. And then once I open this, it should be right there. And this is what you should have, okay? So it'll look like this. You'll have an image with rounded corners. It'll say Daffodil Woodlands and the header. You'll have a footer here, and then just an about container with some information, okay? So get that working. We're going to come back to this in a little bit, but I want to do a couple PowerPoints just to recap some stuff while you guys get that working, okay? So basically, intro recap to basic website stuff here. Doctype.html, that's the first thing we always type in our HTML documents. It's basically a simple tag that says we're using hypertext markup language, and it tells the browser that we're using HTML5, okay? And so then basically the browser will recognize this as an HTML document and render properly on the page. And then everything is inside of an HTML tag. So if I come back to my code here, right, there's my doc type, and then everything is nested inside of this HTML tag here, okay? That's where all your HTML code goes. Cool. This is the root node, okay? That's what we call the root node. And it's an opening is symbolized just with the open angle bracket and the close angle bracket, and then the closed tag is symbolized by the slash here. So we can see there's the open angle bracket with a slash. So that's how you know this is an open HTML tag and this is a closed HTML tag. Cool. Most tags in HTML will have that opening and ending tag. So there's a few exceptions. So for example, we can see the div tag has an open, and then there's a class in there. And then a closed div tag right here. But for example, is it the meta tag? Okay, it's just one tag all in itself. So some people actually close it with like a slash at the end. You don't really need to do that. Also, another example of a tag that's like that is an Img tag, which I'll show you guys an example of in a little bit. But most tags have opening and ending tags. Cool. Now inside of HTML, which is the root node, we have our head tag and our body tag. Inside the head space is the metadata, which is basically like if you think of a book, it's like the beginning of the book. It's like the publisher, the author, the date, all of that good stuff. So if we come here, here's my head tag. It's nested inside of my HTML tag. And inside we can see there's metadata, so viewport width, scale width, all our links to our style sheets, and any manifest data or other JSON files, and then the title, right? So just like the title of a book. All of that goes in your head tag, okay? The next tag, which is indented at the same indentation, so I can maybe zoom in here if that's not big enough. You guys can see these little gray lines. If I annotate right here, okay, these little gray lines going down, you can see that the head is basically one line, and then the body, if I draw as straight of a line as I can, is all here. It's all nested at the same depth as the head, okay? And now, inside the body, this is where our main content goes. So divs, headers, and then, you know, buttons, all that good stuff. So coming back here, the body is generally everything else other than the head. Cool. Cool. Inside the head tag, so you'll see something that usually says meta charset UTF-8. That basically supports most characters an international glyph set. So basically languages from all over the world. It supports the rendering of these characters, and we need to tell the browser what language we're going to use. So UTF-8 is Unicode 8-bit, which supports most characters. It doesn't have a starting and an ending tag. You can see it has the slash in it at the end. So that's different than most other tags. Cool. The title tag, that just gives us the title of our page. So in the top of your browser, when you go to your browser, you can see here in my tab at the top, it says flowers right there. So if I annotate, I don't know, hopefully you guys can see this. That's what your title tag does, okay? It's different than this. Cool. Any questions, just stop me. If I'm going too fast, I'll slow down too, but this is kind of a recap. I think most people should understand this stuff. Can I get a thumbs up if most people are pretty good with HTML? I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I also want to get you guys up to speed if, yeah, okay. I can go a little faster too if this is, boring, boring you guys. But, and then in the images folder, you have to create subdirectories for all of your stuff. We always keep our folders lowercase. That's just a web convention. And then we reference them with an img source tag right there. Cool. And then here's the example of the image tag I was talking about. It also doesn't have an opening and an ending tag. It has just all in one, your src images slash, and then they did a silver toaster JPEG here. And then we also have an alt text. So the alt tag is basically required for accessibility options. We'll talk about accessibility a little bit later today. But basically, if a person can't load the image, say you have a really slow internet connection, or a user is visually impaired and they use a screen reader, so like a text-to-speech reader, then it will read the alt text of the image, because obviously if someone's blind, they can't see the image. So we need to include some accessibility options so that our websites are accessible to all users, if that makes sense. Awesome. So that was a little quick recap. Now this next one, all of these PowerPoints I'm covering, by the way, guys, they're all here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are all these. So I just did recap of HTML PowerPoint. Now we're going to talk about a couple web design standards that we like to keep as we are making our web apps and as we design web apps in this course. I want you guys to remember some of these standards. So typically, if you have a logo, it'll be on the top left. I think something like 80% of websites follow these standards, okay? That's why we call it. There's no official standard committee or design committee that decided on these, but when you look at the stats and the data, like 80 or 90% of websites follow these conventions or standards. I can't call them conventions, but cool. That's a little bigger. Another one, the nav bar is a horizontal header. So if you go to georgiancollege.ca, if you open up in your browser, see how many of these things, I'll do it here too, actually follow these standards. If I go to georgiancollege.ca, logo top left, okay, yes, there's their logo. The header is a horizontal header along the top of the screen. Yes, it follows that. The nav bar. Drop down menu items. Okay, let's look at Georgian. Do they have drop down menu items? Yes, they do. If I hover over these, there's drop down menu items. So that's cool. Social media links at the bottom of the page in the footer. Let's scroll down. Do we have social media links? Yes, we do. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn. And then the rest of the information here for campus and directions and phone numbers and emails. That's all good. Responsive design. So what do I mean when I say responsive design? Does anyone know? Can they tell me? We're going to be talking about this today with Bootstrap.
So like it's basically the website, but just in the application form.
Sure.
In the form of application. Like it looks like the website itself, but as the formatting and everything is done regarding keeping the phone in our mind.
Totally, yeah. So you're designing it so it responds based on the platform the user's using, right? So it'll respond if we're on a giant TV or a giant desktop screen and I'm at my computer, it's going to blow up all the images so that they fill the screen. But if I'm on my phone and I'm on a smaller screen, it's going to change the format. So we can see here in this screenshot, as a desktop or an iPad view, they have the image, they have the headers across the top. We can see all of that information. I'm going to annotate some of this stuff so that you notice. It's like a spot the difference game. So we have a logo, and that's in the same spot here. But because this iPhone 5 screen is so small, the iPhone 5 is the screen on the right here, instead of showing all of these text nav items, right, in the drop downs, because we don't have the space for that on an iPhone 5, we kind of hide them in this hamburger menu, right? Right up here, right there. And if a user clicks that menu, then those options are displayed. But because the screen's so small, we make it almost a separate design depending on the screen width and the screen resolution. Cool. So responsive design, that's basically what that means. And we'll talk about some examples with that. And then a search bar. So search bar, basically, if you have the capability on your website to search for stuff, it's pretty typical that you'll see a search bar. So let's go to Georgian. I know they have a search bar right here, and we can search. And is Georgian responsive? Well, how do we test if they're responsive? Well, right now I'm on desktop, and that's working fine. If I shrink it, though, let's see what happens. So if I go here, oh, did you see that? Where it kind of clicked one in, it clicks. So we just went from a large to a medium screen. And now if I keep going, we'll go from medium to small. See that click right there? It just automatically responds to my browser width. And then if we go from small to extra small, look at this. This is really interesting. So this, full-time programs, continuing education, international students, and guide for new students. If I annotate this, okay, so this is, let's call this number 1, menu item number 1. Let's call this, oh man, menu item number 2. I'm really messy at drawing with the mouse. This is menu item number 3, and this is menu item number 4, okay? So keep your eye on those, and let's see what happens, okay? They're going across the page horizontally right now on our small screen. If I shrink it to extra small, look at that. They now go vertically. And there we have our 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they're going this way now. So that's what responsive means. So Georgian is responsive, which is awesome. Another way you can test responsiveness is how I showed you at the very beginning of class. If I hit F12 or developer tools, basically up here in Google Chrome, if I go, where is it? Developer tools, more tools, developer tools, right here. Or you can hit F12 on your keyboard. Boom. We can see that this is how it responds on a phone. It goes in that vertical view, right? If I rotate it, still in that vertical view. But if I go to something like an iPad that has more screen space, now it goes across horizontally. Cool. Does that make sense to everyone, what responsiveness is? We're going to be dealing with this a lot today because of Bootstrap.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Now, another example of an unresponsive website, here's my flowers website that I got you guys to download off of GitHub. If I hit F12 on this, check out what happens to the text resolution. Okay. And I go to my iPhone. Look at that, that's terrible. A better example of what we might want, if I hit F12 here, this is what our finished product will look like today, hopefully. I'm just going to refresh that. We can see that the text actually goes all the way across the screen 100%, whereas here, it shrinks it and it keeps that whatever 50% width. Right, so it looks pretty small. And so that's not responsive. Whereas if I go back to my other tab, finished product, this is responsive, okay? I know it's not the prettiest site, but the point is that we make it responsive. Cool. All right, so those are the web standards we'll keep in mind as we build websites in this course. Next PowerPoint that I want to talk about, let's see. Number 3 is web development. Okay, let's see. File management in HTML and CSS. So you always have your images folder, and then your index and style are in your root folder, okay? This is how you refer to images, and yeah, the design recap. So if you want to ever get color schemes for something, this is a really cool website here, adobe.com color wheel. You basically can upload an image and it will give you 5 main colors from that image, or you can use this website Peloton. Cool. All right. Let's see, there's a bunch of other good stuff in here that I'm going to skip over. Same idea as what we're talking about in mobile app portfolio. There's a whole web development process, very similar. Planning is a huge part of it, and wireframes is a huge part of it. So things like NinjaMock. If you want to read more about metadata here and basic HTML tags, you can read these. Comments, this is how you comment in HTML and in CSS. That's just a basic overview. Who's used Bootstrap before? Can I get a show of thumbs up or thumb hands or whatever? Try to expand this so I can see everyone. You have Armin? Oh, okay. You've got your hand up and your thumb up at the same time. That's awesome. Cool. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to implement Bootstrap. So, let's take a look at what we've got here. This should be what you see when you load your website, all right? Try to get this out of the way. Has everybody got their website ready to go? This is what they see? Yes, cool, awesome. And you've got your text editor open. That is good. Okay. So let me close this. Open up my new, just give me a second. Is that? Yeah. A little zoomed in here. Style.css, and there's our image folder. Okay. All right, yeah, Michelle, no worries. I'm gonna get mine open right now. So while you get yours working, try to do it at the same time as me here. Try to get mine open too, just so we can all follow along together, okay? That. Sorry guys, give me 2 minutes here. Whatever your favorite IDE is, you can use Visual Studio Code if you want. You can use, I'm using Sublime. You could use brackets. You could use really whatever you want. Okay. What's that? Okay. So I made a PowerPoint for you guys who are watching asynchronously if you want to follow along. But let's take a look at what we're working with here in the index. So we've got our alt text here. We've got our photo. That's all good. And little quick thing while I'm talking about CSS. It's good for you to know that the selector, if I refer to this, H1 or whatever you're editing, so in this case, the body is the selector. So it's what you're going to apply the property and the value to. So the property is the color, and the value of what we're affecting on color is red, okay? So just keep in mind, as I mentioned, selector, properties, and values, that's what I'm referring to in CSS. Okay, cool. Close that, and we should be good to go. Bootstrap. So who wants to tell me a bit about Bootstrap? What's Bootstrap?
So Bootstrap is a design framework. Like it is used to make the HTML page responsive.
Perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. It's probably one of the most popular design frameworks to make websites responsive. Thanks, Armin. Yeah, that's a perfect description of it. Yeah, so it's a giant collection of handy, reusable bits of code that we can use to apply to our HTML, our CSS, and JavaScript. It's made by former Twitter employees, and yeah, we can make responsive images, nav bars, drop downs, all using something called the grid. And I'll explain a little bit about what the grid is in a couple slides here. So here's an example: desktop, mobile, right? So this orange, or sorry, pink, green, and blue kind of reorganized like this on a mobile screen. You'll see some references to call large, call medium, call small, and call extra small. Remember when I was shrinking those things and they snapped? Each screen size kind of has a size that it is referenced to. So the largest is LG, medium is MD, then you have small, which is for tablets or something, and then you have extra small, which is for devices and phones. And we can see here, following this little blue div, how each one gets applied on a different device. And here's another example from the Bootstrap website itself, how you might make a responsive website on different device sizes. Cool, so we've got our website here, and we want to make it responsive. So we can see in this video, it's not responsive at all. I mean, it is responding to my screen changing, but it's not actually responsive in terms of being readable and legible and accessible to all users. What we actually want is something more like this. So as we shrink it, you can see it's staying usable on a phone. And now as I scroll down, it goes 100% across the width, right? So I already showed you guys that. There's the difference if you want to see which one looks better, right? One shows the entire web page zoomed out, right? And then one shows it as a mobile view. So what is the grid? When I talk about the grid, can anyone describe the grid to me? Bootstrap grid?
Yes, sir. Like it contains of 12 columns, like in the small size, like the 12 parts.
Yeah, perfect. So there's 12 wide columns. And if you think about like Microsoft Excel, right? You have columns that go up and down, and then you have rows that go side to side, right? Like horizontally. And in Bootstrap, you're always going to have 12 columns. So it doesn't matter if you're on a large screen, a small screen, a mobile screen, there's always going to be 12 columns. And we use these columns to refer to positions when we're modifying the design of our website. So here we can see the rows are going across this way with the arrows, the blue arrows, and then the columns are these longer arrows coming down like this. So if we made columns of one width, so you can specify, if I go back to this picture, 12, an LG 12 will basically be that entire first column, because it's a column that goes across all 12 spaces of the grid. A medium 12 is a 12-space column that goes across all 12 columns on the medium, and then the small goes across all 12 on the small, and the extra small goes across all 12 on the small. So you'll see in a demo I do in a little bit, but here this would be a column of 1, 1, 1, 1, and no matter what you have to do, it has to add up to 12, right? So here we have 6 rows of 2. What's 6 times 2? 6 times 2 is 12. Here we have 4 rows of 3, and 4 times 3 is 12. Here we have 3 rows of 4, 2 rows of 6. Here, down here, we have 1 row of 8 and 1 row of 4. So you can see it always has to add up to 12, which is really cool. And you can leave like blank spaces of columns in between as well if you really want to. But each class will scale up. So if you specify column width of 8 and 4 on the SM, but you also want it to be 8 and 4 on a medium screen, then you only need to specify the smallest device. So you only need to say SM because it will scale up from there, okay? So that's just an important tip to remember. Cool, so a little example of what I'm talking about here. So I made this very basic grid, and I gave outline borders to each div. So we can see the entire container or entire row is this wide, right? This is what 12 wide column is. This is what an 11 wide column, and they're all centered, right? So a 1 wide column is like this. Now, as I shrink it, okay, as I respond, I'm on a large screen right now, so I wanted to go 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But on a medium screen, I actually changed what I wanted, or sorry, not medium. Medium's the same as large right there. On a small screen, I wanted to make them all 6 wide. So they're all 6 wide centered. So I can change and specify, say like on a tablet, I want it to be, or like a laptop, I wanted them to all be 6 wide. And then on extra small screen, I changed it again, just something random. I think I made it like a 3 and a 1, 3 and a 1, 3 and a 1, 3 and a 1. So you can specify how you want your website to look on different screens. Here's another example. So I made, it's a little bit neater looking, but say you have like a blog or something and you have 3 articles across, and then you have 1 article here that's 3, and then a longer one over here. Then you have 2 centered, and then you can have some on top of each other. So keep an eye as I shrink, keep an eye on what happens to some of these boxes. So as I shrink it, the gray and the light gray actually go on top of each other right here, right? And this red box from here will slide down. If I annotate, I made it so it'll slide down underneath these two, okay? Because I made these add up to 6 and 6, so this will get moved to the next row. Can you access this link that I'm showing? I can upload it onto Blackboard if you'd like that. It's just offline on my computer right now, but I can post this. So basically, as I shrink it down, watch that red one's going to slip right underneath. Cool. And then I made these stack on top of each other. And then I made this green box here. You can see I have 2 tall vertical columns, but say I don't want vertical anymore on a phone, I kind of put it underneath like that, right? So kind of cool. And then as you come down to a phone screen, typically you want to give as much real estate to read as possible. So you make everything a 12 wide on the phone so that it's more zoomed in, right? You wouldn't want to have 12 individual columns going across on a phone because that would be a lot harder for the user to read. Whereas on a desktop, you have a lot more room. So just that as an example. Cool. So that's the grid. That's what I talk about, or that's what I mean when I talk about the grid. Cool. So Bootstrap also comes with some pre-made code or pre-made chunks of code that we can use. And they use something called classes. So what's a class? Who knows what a class is? A CSS class. Who wants to describe that? Someone other than Armin, because I know Armin answered the last 2 questions. So I'm going to be picky with who I let answer this. What's a CSS class? What does it do? Remember the to-do list, and I used an even or an odd.
If many elements have a same class, then one style will, I think, will apply to all those elements with that class. I think that's what I recall.
Cool, yeah. And Michelle, is that what you were going to say? I heard you're speaking there too. For styling, yeah, cool. Yes. So Varun, Salman, yeah, awesome. Exactly. So if any element has a class, so you could label the class anything you want. It's an arbitrary name. So I could give it the name hamburger if I wanted to. I could give it the name even or odd. And then basically in your CSS code, that's what you're referring to, right? A class is a selector that affects like code from your CSS styles.css, which will affect that element. So in this example, we have a nav element in HTML, and then we're applying the class aspect, which is a CSS piece of code or styling that'll get applied to the nav. So if I had a class here called hamburger, and I put hamburger in all of these, if inside my hamburger class in CSS, I had like background color red, then these navs would all be red. Now, if I said I had hamburger and I had hot dog, and then the hot dog was yellow, then yeah, it would make this nav look yellow. Cool. So basically, let's see if I've got any classes in here to show as an example. So I have a class here called alternating, right? And it's on a p tag, which is a paragraph tag. So this paragraph, I've only applied alternating to this second one and to the fourth one. And in the class, if I go to the class itself, we can see the dot alternating. So that's how we describe a class, is with the dot, okay? H2 refers to the selector itself, so it's the actual HTML element. A dot is a class, and you can create your own name. So I could call this alternating ASDF. As long as I refer to it as the exact same ASDF in my code, it'll get the reference, right? So I'm just going to get rid of that because that's not good programming. And then a hashtag is an ID selector. So we have class selectors, and then we have ID selectors. So let me show you what a class selector does first. So basically, you're creating a CSS rule that targets any element within that class. So if I go to my website, we can see that number 2 and number 4 have that background applied. Now, my number 1, this is using something called an ID selector. An ID is different than a class because it basically is a CSS rule that targets an element with the ID. So an ID is different than a class. Instead of a dot, we use a hashtag. And then I have a different background color set. It's the same idea. You're applying a certain style to anything that has that ID, but you can only have something with one ID. So instead of using class equals, I use ID equals. And it's kind of cool because ID also has other purposes that we can use. Like you can scroll to certain IDs. Whereas if something has multiple classes, you don't know which specific element you're targeting, right? So this is an identifier for that paragraph as first. And so the first one has that color, and we can see it's blue. Awesome. Oh, you found it. Perfect. Awesome, Michelle. Cool. The meta tag, we set our responsive viewport width. So you always need this if you want a responsive website. And using Bootstrap, we have to do this, okay? So we're gonna add Bootstrap to this site now. So everyone has their code up, working, ready to go. Now that we've covered some of this stuff, we know what CSS is, all that stuff. Okay, cool, thanks, Salman. So let's go to getbootstrap.com, I believe. Get Bootstrap. Just Google getbootstrap.com. It'll be the first link, and then hit the Get Started button right here. It's the purple button. It'll take you to the introduction page, okay? And it gives us all the steps we need, okay? So step 1, they don't actually have it here, but I have it in the PowerPoint, is make sure you have your responsive viewport tag. So meta, name, viewport, content, width, device width, initial scale 1, shrink to fit, no. I think yours is in there by default. No, it's not. Okay, so we want to add that. So after meta, char set UTF-8, we're going to do, I'm just going to put this on the other screen so I can code. After UTF-8, we're going to do name equals viewport. This is so the Bootstrap can reference it. They might have this covered in a second step, but I like to do this first. Content equals width equals device dash width, comma, initial scale equals 1, shrink to fit, shrink hyphen to fit equals no, and then end your quotes. Cool. So basically what this is doing is we're giving our site here a viewport, a name of viewport. So anything we affect the viewport with, it'll affect our site. And then we're setting the width to the device width and the scale to 1. So what that does is it's just going to make it relative to the scale of your device. So if you're on a phone, it'll get the resolution and set the width to whatever your device is. And if you're on an iPad or whatever, it'll do it responsively, okay? So that's the first step. Everybody got that? It shouldn't change too much. You can save it and refresh the website in your browser. It shouldn't change anything too much, right? If I shrink this down, it's still going to be pretty bad. Almost. Okay, cool. These steps are also in the PowerPoint for you guys. So if you want to follow the PowerPoint, if I'm going too fast, step 1 is there, step 2 is here, step 3 is here. So they're all out there. So if you're doing this asynchronously, follow the PowerPoints, download them, and do it there. Cool. Okay, step 2. So it's also on the Bootstrap website. Step 2 is going to be copying and pasting. Let me just get rid of this because this is in my way. This link rel to the style sheet for Bootstrap. So basically, their style sheet is this huge 1,000 lines of code style sheet. So if you click, if you take this link, HTTPS CDN Bootstrap min CSS, if we go here, it's basically hosted on a CDN, which is a content delivery network. No, you just click get started, Michelle. You can download Bootstrap and host it on your own machine, or you can just link to the style sheet that's hosted online. The only risk of doing a link rel to their HTTPS content delivery network is that, say that the style sheet's down, like this website, this is the thousands of lines of Bootstrap code and pre-made classes and pre-made material and pre-made selectors with pre-made styling and everything. And we're going to be able to just type a class and then use their pre-made success style button or like whatever button class they have. If you reference this and this website's down, your website's going to look like crap because you're not going to have any styling. Now it's on a CDN, it's on a content delivery network, so I think it's like guaranteed 99.999% uptime or something like that. So you're probably fine to just link to this in your code and know that it will be up 99% of the time. But if you really wanted to, you can download Bootstrap and then just reference this style sheet and put it in your root folder. Like instead of styles.css, you'd have another one called like bootstrap styles.css, and then you'd add your link rel same way, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this. I'm going to click copy to clipboard, and you want to add this up in our head file where all our metadata goes. And I think you want to do it before. Now, we may have to test this because I'm actually forgetting right now. I think you want to do it before your own style sheet. So I'm just going to add a comment. I'm going to say this is a link to our external Bootstrap CSS file. Okay, and then new line and paste the code that I copied. Okay, we're using Bootstrap 5.1.1. If Bootstrap updates, so since I've done this, you can see here in the PowerPoint, it's 4.5.2. You just get the most up-to-date link, right? Same thing if you're downloading it, you would just download the most up-to-date one. So that's step 2. All right, so that's done. Step 3. Okay, let's look at step 3 in the PowerPoint. Many of our components require the use of JavaScript to function. Specifically, they require jQuery, Popper.js, and our own JavaScript plugins. Add the following scripts near the end of your page, right before the closing body tag. The reason for this is so that all the DOM elements on the HTML page can load before you call a JavaScript to modify them. So JavaScript can modify the DOM, but if, say, the DOM element's not loaded, then basically it's going to be like, oh, I'm looking for this div tag and I want to modify it or add a function to this button so that when you click it, it adds a to-do list item, but I can't find it yet because it's not loaded. So that's why we always put our JavaScript at the very bottom so that everything's loaded first. So put it right before your closing body tag at the bottom. jQuery must come first, then Popper, then our JavaScript. Cool. So if we go back to the Bootstrap site, we can see that the exact same thing is here. Many of our components require JavaScript to function. So you can include every Bootstrap JavaScript plugin and dependency right here by copying this, or you can do it separately. If you decide to go with separate script solution, Popper comes first. And then if you're using tooltips or popovers, and then JavaScript plugins. So I don't know really what the difference is. If it's easier just to do one line of code, then do one line of code. But we do it right here before our closing body tag. So I'm going to scroll all the way down in my index.html. Here's my closing body tag. I'm just going to do a couple new lines, and then I'm going to make a comment saying these are the Bootstrap JavaScript dependencies. Hopefully I spelled that right. All right, and then I paste it. All right, so we can see that again, it's a link to a CDN, content delivery network, that's hosting bootstrap.bundle.min.js. So that's a JS file. Cool. Awesome. So that was step 3. Now, so that's the JavaScript, jQuery, popper. I think that's everything all in one. So let me see. If you use modules, you have to refer to that section. We're not using modules. Curious which components use JavaScript. So if you use any alerts or buttons or carousels or dropdowns, then you need to use popper and all that stuff. So we should be fine because we used everything in the bundle. Cool. All right. So I think that's good. So now, if we save this, we should have Bootstrap. Let's refresh our page and let's see if it's working. So this text, because it's an H1, should change if you watch this, because I think they use a certain font library for H1 tags because it's an H1 or because it's a header. There's certain classes that Bootstrap has predetermined should be applied to headers. So if I refresh this, we can see it just changed. The size of it changed. We can see these got bigger. It's a different font. It's like Tahoma now or something like that. So it did change some of it, right? Did you notice that? That's cool. Which script links did you just add at the bottom? Just this one bundle right here, Michelle. Just this. Just copy this right here. Here, Michelle. So I'll take a little bit of a break. If you wanted to follow the PowerPoints or whatnot, and I will post the recording of this too if I am going a little bit too fast. I'm trying to just split the difference between going too fast and too slow, so try to maintain just right in the middle there, okay? So if I do need to slow down, I'll try to slow down there for a bit. I think we're going to take a little bit of a 10-minute break here. We'll come back around 1 o'clock. So everyone get to the point where Bootstrap's working. If you want to grab a coffee or get up and go to the bathroom or something, stretch your legs, get off the computer or the screen for a bit and go outside. Do that now. I'll pause the recording. Cool. Pause. All right, welcome back. The recording is unpaused and we should have Bootstrap working. Was everybody able to get that working successfully? Any thumbs up or anything in the chat? Is everybody still on break? Right, so you'll know your Bootstrap's working if you refresh the page and your Daffodil Woodlands text size changed. Did anybody get that working? Oh, maybe I'm not seeing chat, but I can't see anything. Okay, cool. Well, now that we have our Bootstrap, our next goal here, if we go to F12, is to make it look good on mobile. So we can see here, the image looks pretty crappy, and even this is pretty terrible. So it's okay on desktop, right? But our mobile view sucks. So we want to start doing some modifications for that. So we'll go to our code. Are people back? I just want to make sure I'm not talking to nobody. People are back from break? Yes. Okay, good. All right. For some reason, I couldn't see anything in chat or anything, but okay. Cool. So, let's see, check our, so we want to change our image instead of hard coding values. Basically here, 50 pixels and 50 pixels, we can see that when we go on to our mobile view, 50 pixels and 50 pixels, it's too far down and it just looks bad. So we want to do this in a different way that's going to be automatic. So I'm going to erase all of these. Well, we can keep the border radius if you want, but margin left, auto. All this code is in the PowerPoint again. Margin right if you're following asynchronously or you missed a section. Margin right auto. And then here's the key, display block is going to change the way Bootstrap interprets how to display the image. So I'm going to save that and I'm going to refresh this. And okay, sheesh, it's a little bit big. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple of classes. Right? So we can tell this is way too big. And if we get out of mobile, still see we want some space on the top and some space on the bottom. So this and this we want to separate. So we want to use something called padding, right? And the class for that is just a P. And then the way Bootstrap works is you can have 1 to 5, okay? 5 being the most and 1 being the smallest. So you can do P-1, or you can do P-3, or you can do P-5. And remember how we do classes, okay? I'll come back to my code here. It's not in the style.css, it's actually in the element itself. So we find our Img tag here. Okay, I'm going to zoom into it. Whoops. Here's my Img tag. I've got my source images flower.jpg. I've got my alt text. And then after that, or really anywhere, just not in the quotes, we add something called a class, right? And then you want to have 2 quotes. You can do these all on separate lines too if you like the look of that better. Like you can do a new line on each one if you just like it being separated. It doesn't really matter because the browser, when it interprets the HTML, it'll get rid of the white spaces. So the class I'm going to add, okay? So we want to add some padding. So we're going to do P-3. So I'm going to save that and let's look at the difference that this makes. Look at that. A little bit of padding now. That's been added right here and right here. It actually adds it on all sides, but we just have nothing on the left and the right hand side. We can do it a little bit more if we want to do padding 5. Let's see what the biggest one looks like. There's a little bit more space. Cool. Some other classes we want to add. Okay, so you can add more than one class at a time, but you have to put a space in between. Okay, you don't have to do comma, you don't have to do new quotes, you don't have to say class again. You just go right after the number 5 here. Space. Rounded circle. So that'll be the shape. And then we can also do img-fluid. And that's the big one that's going to make it responsive as an image. I'm going to save that. And boom, it changes the shape to a circle instead of rounded squares. And when I go mobile, look at that. It's actually responsive. It's not huge anymore. It's fluid to my screen size. If I rotate it, it's fluid. So, kind of cool. Awesome. So that's our image fixed. That was the first step. All that code, if you missed anything, is here on this slide in the PowerPoint. So if you want to pause the video, if you're watching the video, right here. These are the classes I added, and this is the CSS code I did right there. Awesome. The next thing we want to do that we want to experiment with is the grid. So we want to use the grid. Remember that I was talking about earlier that has 12 rows and 12 columns. Try to annotate this. So we want to use the grid that goes across like here. Right now, all I'm doing to center this is I'm using like 50% left, 50% right. And because my screen is so small, it looks really bad. But what we actually want to do is use 12 rows on mobile, and then maybe only 9 rows on large or something like that, right? So let's go to our text editor and try some of this. So we're going to come down to our div class container, okay? This container is going to contain the grid itself. So anytime you do rows or columns, you always want it to be in a container. Cool. Lost my chat here for a sec. Is everybody caught up okay with this? What part are you on, Michelle?
I missed what you had after rounded circle on the class listing. I've got P5 rounded circle.
Img-fluid is the last one.
Okay.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So the next step that we're going to do here is on this container, right? So we're going to add a couple divs. So if you can see these gray lines, this container is all of this, right? And these H2 elements and these P elements are all nested inside of it. So I'm going to grab all those H2s and all those Ps and just tab them in twice. And I can do a couple new lines underneath my container and a couple new lines underneath my bottom paragraph so that I have some empty space. So we can see my entire container for the div is right here. I'm going to tab one in, and I'm going to add two divs here. Okay, I'm going to add div number one. I'm going to enter, tab in once again, and add div number two. Now you have to make sure you have the closing tabs, the closing tags for these divs in the right spot. So you can't close the div. We're not going to close it here, right? What we actually want to do is close it at the bottom where this line is. So if you follow this gray line down, the text editor will kind of help you. Your div tag is going to close right here, and this one's going to close right here. So if I just scroll down, we can see it'll kind of auto-code, it'll auto-complete for me as I type the slash. It closes the div, and I'm going to enter one more time, shift tab to go back one tab, and as I type the slash, it'll close my div again. Okay, so you should have three closing div tags all on top of each other here on my line 57. So closing div, closing div, closing div. So it's kind of nesting out. It's coming back out to the root level. And you should have three opening divs here. One that has the class of container, one that's just empty, and one's just empty. And then you'll have your H2s. Cool. Once you're at that stage, we're going to add some Bootstrap classes. This is how easy Bootstrap is. It's awesome. You don't have to do any CSS. We just add classes. So class, and the first class is going to be a row, okay? The second class is going to be a column because columns are inside of rows. So if you think about it, let's see. I don't know if I can draw on anything. Just use my annotation tool. So if I just do this. Notepad, just to get a blank slate to draw on. Here's my annotation tool. So you have to have a row first. So if this is our row over here, okay, we have to have something going this way across horizontally before we can add the columns. And the columns kind of go inside. So if that's like one column and that's like two columns, right? And these columns, I mean, depending on how much information's in them, they can stretch down like this. And as they stretch down, because say it's like a really long paragraph and you can have a really tall column, your row will actually stretch down with it like this. And your row will become one solid object. And you could just ignore that middle horizontal line like this would be wrong. See if I have an eraser actually. Anyways, I just deleted the whole thing. Cool. Hopefully that makes sense. So we add our row first. That's just me describing the order that we do it. So you do row, and then the next class we do is call dash. And now here's where we choose medium, small, whatever. So let's do a medium dash 9. All right. Make sure I'm doing this right. See here. Just double checking. Page. Yeah, we're going to do div call medium -9. All right. So let's save that. -9. Save that. Medium is short for MD is short for medium. Yeah, MD. So if we save that and run it, okay, I'm going to get out of my phone view. We should see this change. All right. There we go. So remember, this is our container. When we do a container element and we applied a background or an outline to it, that's the 12 rows. That's the 12 wide grid. It's going to be inside of this container. If I got rid of this container, okay, then I wouldn't have this. Now, the reason the container, it has this border. If you don't want the border, you can delete this line and it'll just look like that, right? I'm going to keep the border because it helps me visualize the size of my grid. Okay, so as we refresh, my border will be back. So this is 9 rows, and then here's the empty 3. And because 9 plus 9 is 18, and that's over 12, this will start on the next row. All right, now what or how, okay, someone can answer this. This is, the floor is open to anyone. How would I get something over here? Say I want a long column going down beside these. How would I do that?
Make a new div after the
Okay.
column. So within the row and after the column.
So in the same row, but after the first column?
Yeah, so after the class MD call MD9, make a new div, but within the row div.
Right. And then this one should be what?
Not sure. I'll check that, but I'm not sure the class name. You're asking class name, right?
Oh no, I was
Oh,
just
yeah,
going to
because
say the
it's 12.
size.
Okay.
The size, yeah,
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 because
yeah.
it's
So it
12.
equals 12.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
cool. Yeah, so you're right. Perfect. So inside the same row, we want it inside this same row, so it's still going to be nested in here. We're going to add a new column. So we have column of 9. All right. And let's say we want these first 3 paragraphs, 1, 2, 3 paragraphs in that column of 9. What we're going to do is we're actually going to take this div tag. I'm going to add a new line down here. We're going to move the div tag up so that those 3 are in it. I'm just going to tab it in so it's the same distance. Okay, so now this is a row of 9 inside of this. If I annotate again, inside of this column of 9, that's going to be your column of 9 going across. And then, like Varun was saying, call -med3. Yep, perfect. Michelle, you got it too. We're going to add a new div right here. That's going to be our 3. So this is going to be our 9. Oh man, I can't draw. That's going to be our 9, and this is going to be our 3. So give that a shot. I'm just going to add it right here. So it's at the same level, div class call. Instead of 9, I'm going to do a 3, and then make sure you close your div at the same level. Cool. Save it, and what do we got? Let's refresh. Look at that. It bumps that bottom one out. Perfect. So there it is. We can see our 9 and our 3 equals 12. Now, because we specified it at medium, basically it'll happen for large, it'll happen for medium. So it'll happen from the size medium and up. But as soon as we go to small, it'll go back to default, whatever it was before. So This is large. This is medium. As soon as we go to small, see how it bumped back out to the bottom? It's going to bump back out to the bottom. Now we could make it so it's not medium because this doesn't look that good as a medium, but we could change that. But I'm not too concerned with it at the moment. Cool. Other things that we can do. Not that we have to do this, but I just want to show you guys. So just like we had our padding, which is a class of like P3, you can also do it for margin. So you can do margin, I think you can just do M3, but it's on a scale of 1 to 5, right? You can also specify if you want margin top, you do MT dash whatever number. And you can do margin bottom dash however much you want your margin on the bottom to be. So if we go to our code and we want some margin on, say there's a row, okay, going across, we can just do a space after that class. Then you can just do MT-5 space MB-5. And just like that, if I save that, you should see some margin get added to this row. Just like that. See, the margin was just added above the about and below this bottom paragraph. So it just gives a little bit of extra spacing. Now, if you're ever confused or you don't know how to figure out all this stuff, you can basically find out all the classes for Bootstrap on their documentation page. So if you go to, where is it? Classes, Bootstrap Classes. There's a whole list, basically, on their website here of everything that you ever need to know. So I can scroll through this whole thing. It's like thousands and thousands of stuff, but like block quotes, you can see what that does. Let's see if I can just see Img fluid, or maybe the padding one's a good example. Bootstrap classes, MG dash. Let's see. Spacing. So here in documentation, okay, all of these things under utilities or whatever. So I'm on the specific utility of spacing. You can see all this different notation. So M is for margin, P is for padding, T is for margin top or padding top. So you can add the T to the back. Bottom, L and R for left and right. X is for classes that set both left and right, and Y is for top and bottom if you want to do top and bottom. So you have 0 to 5 actually. So 0 is no padding and 5 is the most padding, okay? So here's some examples. Horizontal centering, you can do MX auto. That's a really good one to know. If you want to know some position classes, position static, position relative, fixed top if you want it to be sticky on the top. All of these things, colors. So they have classes that are already set as pre-labeled primary, secondary, success, and you can see the colors here. Primary, success is green, danger is red, warning is yellow. So you can see all these different colors, and you can see them on their with a .bg primary. It's the background color. Whereas if you want it to be the actual color of the text, you just do text dash and then the color success, text dash warning. Buttons is a really cool one too. Let's see if I can find, or borders. So all of these, border, border top, border dash right, you can see what they do and how they affect. They have really good documentation. You can do border, border dash primary to get a colored border. All the classes are here, so you don't ever have to actually write CSS. You can just literally go to their documentation and find, vertical alignment classes. And there you go, if you want to move stuff around. If you want to find text classes to do like left justified, right justified, all caps, you just do text dash uppercase, and it's going to be all caps. Cool. What else did I want to cover? So we got this working the way we wanted to. Now, is it working like that on mobile? Let me see. I hit F12. Okay, it's still scrunching the text. So we have to figure out why it's scrunching the text like that. So I believe if I go to my container, if I get rid of these margin left auto and margin right auto, let's just get rid of that. And width 50%, let's get rid of that. Save it and refresh. There we go. It's going to be 100%. Perfect. And now it's how it should look on mobile. And if I do F12, it's still going to be perfect on a large screen, just like that. The 12 columns is now this big in the container. Cool. And if I go to a medium screen, it'll adapt relatively. And as soon as I go to small, the contact me goes right underneath from that sidebar. So there's no overflow anymore. Pretty cool. So that is responsiveness. That's how you make a responsive website using Bootstrap and customizing the Bootstrap using classes. Awesome. Okay, what else did I want to talk about? So there's all the links for Get Bootstrap, Bootstrap layouts, and Bootstrap classes. So if you want to get classes, if you're using Bootstrap 4, this is the Bootstrap 4 link, but you can just Google it. And then layouts, this is kind of cool too. If you want to ever get started with a layout, say there's an idea of something you want, they already have pre-made starter templates and stuff that you can use, or Nav Bar templates and all that. So when you're making a website, you can just grab a template and start off of here and then kind of fill in your code. There's a carousel template, all this good stuff, a sign-in page. So you don't actually have to make a lot of the design yourself. It saves you a lot of time. Then you can just customize it from there. So I don't have a problem if you guys want to use some of these nav bars for assignments and stuff in this class, but just make sure you customize it a little bit. Don't take the code purely and just leave it like this. Like, change it a little bit. Change the color, change the order, change the size or the font, change the name, obviously, of the drop downs and everything. But cool. So those links are all in the PowerPoint. Any questions? Is everybody on the same page? A show of thumbs up. Okay. HTML. Here. I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see it all. View. There we go. The opening divs, the closing divs, the row, the column, and then the other column of 3. All right. So let me go to my Blackboard and talk about a bit about what you guys are going to get into. So you'll see links on Blackboard for Bootstrap examples, Bootstrap intro, Bootstrap classes, a CSS validator. CSS validator is kind of cool. Oh, the link might be broken. Basically, you plug in your CSS. You can just Google a CSS validator as well. You plug in your CSS. So let's take my CSS, for example. What did you change on the CSS? Oh, just this. I basically kept the border on the container, the dot container, and then I got rid of everything else except for the margin bottom. You can get rid of the margin bottom too, though, to be honest, because we can add that on the front end with Bootstrap. I'll fix this link for the CSS validator, but basically, you plug in your CSS file, and I'll show you an example here. Say I copy Control-C, my entire CSS file, and then I come over here, validate by direct input. So this is w3.org, which is a highly respected validation service. And I paste in my CSS code and I hit check. All right, and it said, look, congratulations, no errors found. That's awesome. If I go back and let's say I actually put in an error, like I forget the semicolon, and I hit check. Oh, she didn't find it. What's going to be something that'll throw an error? If I miss a bracket on body, check. Yeah, there we go. It'll find a parse error. So kind of cool. And then here it'll tell you kind of what you should do to fix it. So it re-added that bracket. So I will ask for this sometimes in projects just to show that you actually checked your code and ran an error check, because there is no error checking in some of these IDEs, right? So there are those tools online, just so you're aware of it. Cool. What else? So here, hyperlinks and nav bars. I want to talk a bit about them and Bootstrap classes, and then we're going to introduce the assignment. The other thing I want to mention here is Wireframe.cc. You can wireframe websites really easily, really quickly for free. You don't have to create an account for tablets, for phones, for desktop, whatnot. You know, you can just start by literally dragging your mouse and saying like, oh, this is an image element. This is going to be a paragraph, and then it will just put in some lorem ipsum germ stuff, and you can move it around, double click it, delete it. So if you want to make wireframes for a website, just a good resource to have. Just like that, right? Cool. So I will ask for wireframes sometimes when you want to design a site in this course. So wireframe.cc, but you can also use NinjaMock or whatever wireframe application that you like to use. I know there's some really good other options for free as well. So let's see. Let's go to this. So the last PowerPoint we're going to go through is hyperlinks and nav bars with Bootstrap. Okay, so remember we did this. This is a review. So you add something called a nav tag. You would add this anyways without use XD to do the mockups. Yeah, you can use whatever you want. We would add the nav tag anyways, regardless of using Bootstrap or not, but we add classes to our nav tag to add a nav bar. So all of this documentation is on bootstrap.com or you know, in their nav section. But basically we want to add a nav bar. So let's add this code to our I'll type it out with you guys here. So let's go to our index.html and let's add this code. So basically it's going to be inside your header tag in the body. So here's my header tag. I have an H1 here, which is my Daffodil Woodlands title. I'll probably get rid of that, but okay. So here we go. We're going to start typing nav. As I close it and hit enter, it should automatically close my nav. Oh, there we go. Okay, and then inside of this, we're going to have an anchor element, which is just basically used for links. And inside our anchor element, I'm going to use the strong tag, which basically makes it bold. And there we go. So that'll be our title of our nav bar. All right. You can copy this code too from Bootstrap if you don't want to type it out. I'm just going to explain it as I type it. But basically, if you do Bootstrap Navbar, okay, and you go to this first link, if you don't want this one, it's way too complex. Let's see, which one are we going to do? Let's see which one. Copy and paste the classes. Nav bar. I think it'll be roughly like this one. So if you wanted to copy this collapsible nav bar here, you can copy this code. I'm going to type it out if you want to follow along, but you can choose any of these and modify it to match whatever I'm typing. Okay, so we're going to go a little fast here because I don't want to go super long today. and then I'm going to introduce assignment 1. So if you can't keep up, no worries. You can always copy the nav bars and put them in, but I just want to explain how they work as I type this one out. Okay, so we have our nav with our anchor element, and under the anchor element, still inside the nav, we're going to add a button, okay? And this button, we're also going to add a span inside of, and you'll see what this does in a little bit. I'm going to close my span, I'm going to close my button, okay? So basically, if I go like this, it should be like that, okay? All right. So under our button, we're going to add a div, still inside the nav bar here. That button is basically going to be what is collapsible when you're on a mobile view. I'm going to close my div, tab in, do an unordered list. That's what UL is. And then a list item inside of my unordered list. Okay, inside my list item, I'm going to have an A with an href of nothing for now, so I'll just do pound. And then we can type link 1. And then close our anchor tag, close our li tag, close our ul tag, and then close our div tag. All right. Okay, so I'll separate these so that they're a little bit more distinguishable. So this is going to be one list item. Okay, this is going to be a link in our nav bar. Let's see what this looks like when we run it. So go to our website, exit the mobile view, and refresh. Looks pretty gross, right? Looks pretty bad. We can see when I click that, it added that to the link because it would go to whatever link I send it to here. So this is not working right now, and there's my button with my span because I haven't added any of the Bootstrap classes, okay? Now, that anchor tag, I can make this go to hashtag first or whatever. So if I do hashtag first in my code, okay, let's see here, href hashtag first. Now remember, I was talking about ID selectors earlier, right? So down here, I have this ID selector of first. This is something that we can kind of do that's cool with an href and an ID selector that you can't do with classes. So if I save this and I go here and I click this, refresh it so it updates, look at that, it scrolls me down to wherever that first paragraph is. And now if it was a longer page, it would scroll me right to the section. Okay, so if I click it, it brings me to it, which is kind of cool. You can't do that with classes, but if you add an ID to something that also has a class, then you can do that, which is kind of neat. Cool. If you don't have smooth scrolling, you need to make sure in your CSS, in the HTML tag, you have scroll behavior smooth turned on. Okay, but mine already scrolled pretty smoothly. Like if I go to it here and I click this, it actually scrolled pretty smoothly. If I save it, I don't know if there'll be much of a difference. Yeah, so you might not need to do that anymore. That might be new. That's just something you had to do in the past. All right. Obviously, if we wanted to add new pages, instead of linking to first, we could link to like secondpage.html. That'll be something we cover in the future. I don't want to do that today, but you can add a new page and then link to that page.html as long as you label it the same document. So like in your root folder, if I copied this and made something called about.html and then I typed about.html here, it would open up that page, which is kind of cool. And now let's talk about, this is the power of Bootstrap. Okay, this is what we're going to do right here. So we're going to take our nav bar and we're going to actually completely modify it so it looks like a real nav bar. All right, so follow along as we add these classes. Okay, so nav class. So nav bar is the first class. Nav bar dash expand medium. So we want it to expand only on medium and larger. We want to give it a background of dark, and nav bar is also going to be dark. Okay. Okay, so let's save that and let's see. We shouldn't get too much change, but some things should change. That looks good. There's our link, there's our nav bar, and we can see the background is dark. Okay, so that's a good start, right? All this code, by the way, guys, is in the PowerPoint. If I'm going too fast here, I just want to make sure that we have time to talk through the assignment. So all this code is there. Okay, so now moving on to this next tag, the A tag. This is going to be our brand or logo on our Bootstrap Navbar. So you add this class to our anchor tag for a logo title. So class equals navbar dash brand. Okay, and then you can give it a link to, I'm just going to do an empty link for now. Oops. I'm going to save it and let's take a look at what it does. Look at that. It changed the size of my nav bar, and if I hover over it, it's got a link on it now. Okay, cool. So that's all that did. It was added a link to this nav bar text. Next thing we want to do, this is the fun one. We add a class to our button. So on button, we do class equals navbar dash toggler. Okay. Then we move over and we do type equals button. Then we do data dash toggle equals, I believe this is still the right way to do it, collapse. And data target equals hashtag collapsible navbar. All right, so that should work. Then we also want to add something to our span. So we also want to add a class here on our span, right after the word span, class, navbar, toggler, icon. So that's going to be that little hamburger icon, that little toggle menu. So if we refresh this, it just disappeared, right? That span just disappeared because we said it's only going to collapse after medium, right? So if I go to medium, there it is. There's that icon. Now it's obviously in the wrong spot here, and it's not doing anything when I click it because we still need to add some of that code. Cool. So we're getting there. We're getting there. We have to do a couple other classes here. So now we need to add classes to the div, the ul, the li, and the a so that they act as a navbar would as well. So bear with me here. There's going to be a bunch of them. But once you're done this, your navbar is done. So class equals collapse navbar dash collapse. And then we're going to give it an ID of collapsible navbar. Now what this ID is referring to is right here, this data target. So this is going to be everything inside this div is going to be what collapses. So you could have more than one list item here of all the pages, and it's basically going to collapse into this button when you're on a mobile phone, right? So that's going to be referring to what collapses. All right. Now in the UL, we're going to add a class of navbar dash nav. In the li list item, we're going to add a class of nav item. So one's navbar nav, one's nav item. And then in the A, before the href, we can add a class. Oops. We can add a class of nav-link. All right. Cool. Now, obviously, if you wanted to add more than one of these, you would just copy your list items and go boom, 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 paste, paste, paste. Cool. So let's save those. Let's take a look at what that did. There we go. So that changed the color. It's looking more like a nav bar every single time. After that, all that's left to do is to delete our old header tags, and then we should have a real nav bar. So let's do that. Let's delete our header tag, save, and boom, there it is. There's your nav bar. If I press link 1, it's going to take me down to my ID of first. And if I shrink it, look at that. Once I shrink it past the medium size, I click this. Oh, it's not expanding because there's one class I need to add that I always forget about. From Bootstrap 4 to 5, it changed. Bonus points to whoever can figure it out before me. collapsible nav bar strap 5. Add something else. Oh, it might be data-bs-toggle. Let's see here. -bs-toggle. Save it. Check. They changed some of the class names when they went from Bootstrap 4 to Bootstrap 5. So, oh, data-target collapsible navbar. Sorry, guys. Usually this works, but I always forget about this. Is your nav bar working for anyone else who followed along? Toggle. This shouldn't be BS. This should just be data-toggle. Button class nav type button toggle target. It's all right. The only difference that I'm seeing here is that they have something called fixed top as a class. So if I try that, if that's the difference, then maybe that's it. But it's close, guys. We're almost there. Just going to do a little bit of debugging here. So I'm just checking every line of code. Nav bar expand -md fixed top. UG dark, nav bar dark. Nav bar brand, href, strong, a tag, nav bar. I could have spelled something wrong too. That's also possible. Nav bar toggler, type equals button, data dash toggle equals collapse, data dash target equals hashtag collapsible navbar, span class equals navbar toggler dash icon, button class collapse, bar dash collapse id collapsible navbar. So those are spelled the same. Anybody got it working? Probably something silly like an open tag is still open or something. Oh, I think I remember what the problem is. So something to do with the order of our style sheet. If I put it below and save it and refresh, it's something to do with that. Let's see. That or where we link our scripts. Sorry guys, I know this is taking up a bit of time here. I'm just gonna retry some of these scripts. I think it's important if we figure these out as they come up, right? Versus not figuring them out at all. So try some new scripts here. Right. Okay, those scripts worked. So instead of using the bundle, bootstrap get bootstrap, instead of using the bundle, I hit get started here. Instead of using the bundle, we do it separately and copy that to our clipboard. And then I do all of our scripts at the bottom. Okay. Paste. Tab those two in. Save it. And truth. No. Oh, it's because, check what scripts I have. I don't have jQuery, right? I've got Popper, I've got Bootstrap, but I don't have jQuery. So that is the problem. Sorry about that, guys. So basically, if you go to the Bootstrap page, we want to get our jQuery. So, jQuery. Where's the jQuery script? Let's see. If you're using
Yes, sir. Mine is working.
yeah, which dependency did you use, Armin?
I use the 4.5.2 scripts.
Oh,
And
you
I
use full.
like pasted the jQuery on the top.
Yeah, where did you find the jQuery link? Like I see the Popper and I see
Sorry,
Popper and Bootstrap, but I don't see
I'm pasting it in the chat.
the link to it.
No, like the links I have provided in the script.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah, so the 4.52 ones work. I know. I'm just trying to figure out with the 5. If I just do this, copy, if I put my link to jQuery script on the top, does that work? Let's see. So yeah, it's something they changed. Bootstrap Bootstrap 5 Nav Bar. That's what it is. So yeah, the way we basically did a nav bar for Bootstrap 4.5. You want to do a nav bar div class container fluid bar brand. So I think that's the difference there. Bar toggler button data BS. Yeah, so we do BS dash toggle because that's the way they have it here. Collapse. Navbar toggler icon. This stuff is all the same. Collapse. Supported content. Let's see if this one works. I'm just going to copy this. So you guys know how these aspects of the navbar work. Basically, we have our div container fluid, which is new, the data BS toggle, which is new. Their target is the ID here of the collapsible navbar. So if I save this one, here's to hoping this works. It does. Okay, cool. So you can make a dumbed down version of it and get rid of some of these list items, but because we haven't covered drop downs and stuff yet. And I don't think I need jQuery. Let's try that. The search. So yeah, there we go. They obviously changed some stuff from Bootstrap 4.5 to 5 since the last time I taught this, which is kind of funny, but same concept. So you have your UL. We have two list items inside of our UL. All right. We did ME auto, which is our margin bottom. The nav link active. You'll see if I actually do this and I expand it, active, it'll show it as a darker black. And up here you can see it's like it's the selected one. If you click this one, then you obviously have to change active to the active on that page. But we have the ID Nav Bar supported content, which is our data BS target instead of collapsible. Nav Bar supported content, so that's our area controls. Yeah, so slightly different, the way that they changed it for Bootstrap 5.0. Sorry about that if I was confusing. Is that working for you guys on Bootstrap 5 now? So like, see, I'm using Bootstrap 5.1. There's just different ways to do it depending on the version of Bootstrap you want to use. And you have to specify when you search their documentation. This is docs/5. If I go /4.5, then I would get the older stuff. But is that okay? Hopefully everyone, I didn't lose you on that too bad. But that is drop downs. So I'll have to update this PowerPoint because that's the old version of it. But yeah, for Bootstrap 4. Cool. Awesome. Glad we could cover that. Now, I do really want to talk about, back in here, our assignment before I go, because this will be due, go on to assignments and tests on Blackboard. You should be able to see assignment 1 is now available. You can download the instructions and creating a website.docs there. It's just the instructions to do the assignment. It's due Wednesday, September 29th at 11:59. So that gives you guys the 29th, almost 2 weeks to do it, okay? It gives you guys 12 days. And basically, if I open up the instructions here, I'll leave the floor is open to questions at any point if you guys have questions. Assignment 1, there's 2 here. Instructions, okay. So you're going to develop a website using Bootstrap, basically, okay? And I want to see some wireframes for that website, and then I want to see your actual website. I'm going to show you some examples from students in the past that have done this, but basically you're going to follow these steps through 1 to 8. You can design and create a website which has a specific purpose and audience and uses relevant conventions. So step 1, select an appropriate context for your website. So for you guys, just do like, if you guys are in the Mobile Portfolio 2 class and I want to get you guys to do a website anyways about yourself, like an online resume, just do a website that is more so about you. So like in the example here, let's take a look at, does this one still work? Yeah. This one, he hosted on GitHub. So if you don't want to purchase your domain name or whatever, you can host it on GitHub pages or whatnot. But we can see there's an academics, a work experience, skills, and personal interests. It's all static, so there's nothing that's being done here with React or anything yet. It's just use Bootstrap to do this kind of stuff, okay? So if we click this, we can get a list of the academic stuff. You can see it looks like Bootstrap, right? Because we've got our nav bar on the top, the text and the font and the colors are the same. So here is the mobile app course from Georgian College. Here's Conestoga College, right? So like, if we go there, back to the home, we can see work experience, and it's basically like an online portfolio about who you are, some of the skills, so, you know, languages on backend databases. This has got a really good mark. This is a great example. Now, obviously, I don't want them all looking like this, like put your own creative spin on it, but, you know, and then some hobbies or personal interests. Cool. So you're going to follow the steps in the Word document here. So number 2, research websites and design ideas. So there's some really great custom portfolios. You don't have to do a portfolio either. You can choose to do like a bakery website, or if you wanted to make a dog walking website, that's totally cool. Online portfolios, web developers. So if you just type that into Google and you look at 15 portfolios to inspire you, here's one by Lawrence Bradford, and we can check this out. And let's see. Here's her portfolio. Oh no, that's not her portfolio. That's who made the article. Let's see. mattfarley.ca. Dujan Markovic. Cafeteria Me, Emily Ridge. So just take a look at some of these. So like, see how it's clean. He designs code. We learn a bit about him. Here's his intro. We have some of the skills he's good at and the tools he's used, right? So obviously here he's got a 12 wide column, and it's 4, 4, and 4. So use Bootstrap to your advantage, guys. And then have a nav bar at the top. Remember those web standards that we talked about and the conventions where nav bars are at the top and the logos in the top left. The social media links are at the bottom, right? If I scroll all the way to the bottom, I'm going to expect to see some way to contact him or find him on Facebook or something like that. Here's another portfolio. It's kind of cool. And if I click about, it'll take me to his page, and I can kind of scroll down. And so it's really up to you to be creative and design a website. It doesn't have to be a personal portfolio about you, by the way. It can be whatever you want. So this one, I'm trying to figure this out. Don't know how that works. If I scroll. Here's one by Emily Ridge. So she's just got some custom portfolios and website design. So you can go through these, find what you like. So do your research and show that you've done your research. So that's step 2. And investigate and explain relevant implications. So talk about how you're going to use your design, talk about the aesthetic elements and why you chose the color theme and whatever that you did. So there will be a written portion to this assignment. So as you can see, if I give another example of a student in the past that did this, this was a good one, I think. So here's their student number, and then they talked about some research ideas. They said they enjoyed the font that was used on this website. Possible fonts that they'll use are these. They enjoyed the colors from these color palettes, and then chose fonts that complement each other, chose color schemes that have high contrast, and used images that don't violate intellectual property. So no copyrighted images on your website, obviously. And then here's some mock-ups about the for the websites that were made on NinjaMock. So I want to see some wireframes. That's step 3. Generate a model in Wireframe using one of these websites with potential layouts and colors. And then 4, justify how your design addresses implications and user considerations and appropriate conventions. So that's what I was talking about with like the nav bars on the top, the logos in the top left, the images are all, no copyright. So I've chosen to, you're going to explain all the choices as to why you designed it the way you designed it. So here we can see her justifications for the design and how it addresses users and the appropriate conventions here. So all fonts were sourced from Google and licensed under open font license. All the color palettes were generated and tested here. So here's an example of the color palettes. All images and video were drawn or taken, so there's no intellectual property rights that were violated, right? So just keeping that in mind as you make your website. Screenshot of the documentation process and key testing procedures. So that's the next step here. Number 5, so you're going to actually develop the website using Bootstrap. You can use the template that we made today if you want and the code from it. And it must demonstrate advanced skill and technique as you implement or integrate components such as some form of nav bar, formatting that is easy to read and use. So don't use gross fonts that are ugly or bad color choices that are high contrast. Make sure it looks professional. Ensuring the site is accessible to a range of users. So that means you have alt tags for visually impaired users, people using screen readers, etc. A customized style sheet and current HTML conventions, commenting on your HTML and CSS, integrating a range of media, so image or moving images and videos, integrating an external library, so that's Bootstrap, and then management of image assets is, you put your images in the images folder. And then number 6, carry out key testing procedures during the development of your website. So for example, screenshots showing that your website has been tested and the output is as expected. So you document changes to your site based on usability testing. So basically what that means is you're gonna, if you see that there's an error or something didn't update the way you wanted it to, or it's not responsive the way you want it to be, then you're gonna document that, and then you're gonna fix it, and then you're gonna document how you fixed it. So we can see here in the example that I was going through, screenshots of documentation process and key testing procedures. So she tested using the accessibility checker on Firefox and ran a test here, and then she could see it didn't pass her test, so she changed the bold text to be lighter and the contrast to be more, the text color to be more contrasting on the background, and she added the label to the nav bar button, right? So you go to the accessibility thing and you run that test there. I'll zoom in actually because you might not be able to see that. So right there, and then they can find some issues. The contrast wasn't high enough, right? And then text labels need names. So going down, she ran the test on all the other pages, and we can see none of those errors are there anymore, right? So that's how you do that. So document that procedure that you're actually going through iterative development. Okay, so this got a really good mark because she followed all of those procedures. And then I also, so this is the last step, want to show document through providing screenshots or a screencast video, the iterative development and design of your website. Document that has been tested, going through iterative improvements as you make design changes to your website. Include annotations and why you made those edits. So that was what she did with the contrast. The last thing that I want to see is that it actually is a responsive website. So test your website to ensure it functions across a range of browsers. So Google Chrome, Firefox, Safari. Run a validation check. So that's the CSS Validator I was talking about today. Test for standard procedures to improve optimization. So loading speed, file size, and image optimization, make sure those are fast. And then test to make sure it has met the relevant web design conventions. So make sure you go through that PowerPoint I showed you of stuff in the top left, search bar, or if it doesn't have a search bar, you have social media icons in the bottom and a way to contact you, etc. Going down, I want to see a desktop view and then a mobile view. So when you run it in mobile, we can see that it's actually responsive and that the Bootstrap works, and then a link to your GitHub. All right, so that is what I'm looking for assignment 1. There's 2 documents you can download. So there's this actual task, and then there is the actual instructions for how to create a website. If you need a little bit of a reminder, follow these steps here. So that's just kind of like a little handout that will give you some hints on, how to get started with a template. So any questions? How many pages is the website? It's totally up to you. Basically, as long as I see all of these things in these 9 steps, after you do all of these, you're going to fill out the information below. So you're going to fill out the context, your design ideas, answer your relevant implications from here. You're going to do the mockups right here. So you're going to paste the screenshots. You're going to justify your design process and how it addresses users and appropriate conventions. You're going to screenshot the documentation process and key testing procedures, and then you're going to have your link to your GitHub URL. So you're going to fill out this entire document. The pages of the website itself, so this document is 4 pages, but it might be longer once you put the images in. If you answer all of these things and it's a single page application, like a giant landing page, and as you scroll down, it has like an about section and a whatever section, I don't care how many pages you have. As long as you have navigation and formatting that's easy to read, it can be a single page, it can be 2, it can be 3. It's totally up to you how you do it, but it should actually have some decent content, but it's more so for me to see that you understand how to use Bootstrap, how to make Bootstrap work, how to design a page, how to mock up a page with design ideas and wireframes, etc. Cool. Any other questions?
Yes, sir. So can we design it using the old Bootstrap versions, or do we need to do it in the Bootstrap 5 only?
It's up to you. I wouldn't go older than 4.5.
Yes.
But you want to support the most recent, because they're always going to be updating. So if you can do the most modern, that's the best because it'll stay the most relevant. But if you want to do 4.5, that's up to you. As long as I can run it and everything works, then that's good. Are we going to be making it into a PWA after, or just a regular website? So right now it's going to be a website and we're going to use Bootstrap to implement it. But as we go on through this, we're going to be making it progressive. We're going to be adding React. So yeah, there will be elements to it that will definitely add a type of application to the website. So if you want to do, personal portfolio, but then, there's not much that you can make an application out of a portfolio. So we'll probably come up with some projects on the side that you can add to the same application. When we start working in React, though, we might, that might be some separate projects too, because the entire project structure changes when we do React. So this project, this assignment is mainly for your understanding of Bootstrap, to assess that you guys understood kind of what we did today, to reinforce the Bootstrap and the grid and design workflow and all of that. And it is going to be more relevant if you're in the mobile app portfolio 2 course to have your own portfolio page to support your mobile apps. I know, Michelle, you already did that, so you'll already have that course completed. But if you kind of want to do a 2-for-1, then that would be cool. Cool. It's totally up to you, Michelle, what you want to do. Let's look at this other example. One of my students made a keyboard website. So here, this example, so it's an 8-page, no, it's a 16-page document that was made for creating the website. All the font ideas are here to the design. So Montserrat, Josephine font, and they talk about the fonts. We talk about the color options. She justified why she chose the color she chose. She justified the background options and some websites that she liked. Okay, so you go out and you find screenshots. Then she made some wireframes, and then talked about the privacy, ethical, and intellectual property issues. Then kept on justifying that, chosen aesthetic elements, and then actually made the website. And then this was the website in the desktop view. This is the website in the mobile view. And this wasn't a portfolio. This was actually a website for buying and shipping product like Amazon. So totally up to you what you make your website. Cool. Yeah, and then this one was for keyboards, like buying keyboards. So it's totally up to you. Cool. All right, if there's no other questions, I'll pause the recording there.
Sir,
And everything is available on Blackboard, so yeah.
sir, when we
Yes.
need to submit the in class of today, like the deadline is showing the previous dates.
Which one are you talking about?
Lab in class
Lab. Oh, let me check.
2.
A
In-
screenshot of
in
your
class
Nav Bar
submission.
working. 2 screenshots, one in mobile, one in desktop. Also, I want to see show your name in the Nav Bar. This one is due, I believe it's today, because we did it all in class. So why is that May? That's the wrong day. I'll do tomorrow, midnight. Cool? For the lab, so you have a bit of time to work on it. Cool? Awesome. All right, tomorrow midnight for the lab, and then the assignment, you still have 2 weeks. So get started on that, and you can use whatever you make today with the Nav Bar and everything as part of the template for your assignment. Cool. All right, I'm going to end the recording here.